Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And we love talking about the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Memphis. We're honored to be joined by Keith Blanchard. He is the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Memphis. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? It's been a while.
Doing well. Yeah, hey. We love the work you do, and you do a lot of good. And so we get to talk about career development, education, fitness, and so much more. But let's start with a little bit of the context. Give us some background on Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Memphis.
We're part of a national movement, of course, which is one of the strengths and one of the things that kind of sets it apart. Being part of a national organization, we have access to a lot of things that some other local nonprofits might not have. So training and funding opportunities and marketing and branding, lots of different things. So that's one thing. We've been around in Memphis over 60 years. So Memphis has always been a very important organization within the Boys and Girls Clubs of America movement. But more recently, we've become what's called a major metro, which is there's not that many of those around. It's based on your budget size, the number of children that you serve, and a few other criteria. So we've been classified as that for quite some time now, but it is a kind of a unique classification that kind of sets us up there. And we're some of the programming that we've implemented in recent years has really set us apart within the Boys and Girls Clubs of America movement. And I'll talk more about that later. But very unique organization with a great history, a long history, some great leadership here. One thing unique about that is we've only had 4 CEOs in our history. So in 60 years, that's the case. So I'm fortunate to be the fourth, and I'm proud to run this organization now and kind of take over from where some of the past leaders left.
Give us an idea of how many centers, because there are the physical centers for what you do, and these are amazing, gathering opportunities for neighborhoods and the kids, expanding into high schools as well. So talk about the number of centers.
We have five standalone centers that we own and operate. We refer to those kind of in-house as traditional clubs, but that's the way we operated for years and way most Boys and Girls Clubs around the country operated as well. I recently learned that about 70% of the clubs in the country now are school-based sites. So that's been a trend nationwide, and it makes sense because if the kids don't have transportation, they're already in the school. The only disadvantage, I guess, is like during the pandemic, as we saw, if we hadn't have had our standalone clubs and the schools closed, we wouldn't have been able to continue like we did. So we try to have a balance of both. That's kind of been the goal from day one. So when I first arrived, we built one more additional standalone club. That was the site out by in Oak Haven. And then we started our partnerships with schools by going into the 2 Promise Academy sites. So that was kind of our test. And then from there, we went in about 5 years ago into Craigmont High School. And the idea was if we can do this here and it's successful, then we'll use it as a model for the rest. And that's exactly what happened. So Craigmont has been a phenomenal success story. And the mayor talked about it a lot, last year or 2 years ago, and that's kind of the model we use to grow into the schools.
Talk about the core areas of focus.
Traditionally, they've been academic success, good character and citizenship, and healthy lifestyles, and we continue to do that in all of our clubs through a variety of programs, and they're age appropriate. So that applies to our elementary school kids all the way up to our high school kids. But as you and I have talked about before, one of the things that attracted me to Memphis was the technical training center that we have here, which was the idea was to provide a training ground for kids who were looking to go into the workforce. So it was career exploration and workforce development. And that was so unique at the time back in 2014 when I came that we really weren't even recognized as part of the Boys and Girls Club movement because it was really different. And you fast forward now, 8 years, and it has become the 4th priority. So, and in fact, if you look at the website, you would think it was the number 1 priority because it really has taken a dramatic turn and is now really considered one of the most important things that we do.
Let's go ahead and dive in deeper, because when you talk about the career opportunities, I mean, it covers a wide spectrum between automotive, music. I mean, it's a pretty broad spread. So talk about that sort of program and those opportunities and what that means to the youth.
Well, we realized quite a while ago that after surveying the local companies and after surveying our students and our kids, we realized that that was really something that was, there was going to be a crisis, and we still see that on the horizon if we don't address it. And a lot of people have started addressing it now, but there was not enough local talent that was staying in Memphis and qualified to move into some of these higher paying, family sustaining careers. And so we started working on that from the very beginning. So all of our kids receive what we call employability skills or soft skills training. So they learn how to do resume writing, and we do mock interviews and create LinkedIn accounts for them and take them on site visits to local companies. We bring in speakers, and we've been doing that for a long time. We started expanding that and expanding the number of programs that we have through a grant that we had from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation a few years ago. And they really, if anything I took away from that, was helping our kids build social capital, how important that is. It's not just what you know, but who you know. And you have to be comfortable in that environment. So what we've really done now with this funding from the city and together in a partnership with Shelby County Schools is we're able to take these kids almost daily somewhere or bring somebody in to speak to them. And I mean, you name it, just about everything from, politicians to law enforcement to attorneys, to FedEx employees and AutoZone leadership team members. We either take them there or that we bring them to us, or a combination. And then, of course, we've taken kids just about every university in the South, in the Southeast, and that's just exposure. Again, giving them a tour of a university campus and let them meet with other students, and we set all that up. So it's been really a lot of we've seen a lot of success. And I've been here now 8 years, so I'm starting to see the results of that work. And as these kids come back and we stay in contact, and it really has been successful. So I think two words are exposure and social capital. That's what we really are trying to provide.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, is for them to see it so that they can be it and understand all these opportunities that exist for them, especially in different careers that they never would have seen before or had access to before. Right. I think it's so important to open up their eyes to these opportunities, and especially to all these jobs here in the Mid-South. You mentioned the soft skills. Talk about things like conflict resolution, because I think it's one thing to teach them, like you said, the technical side. It's another, though, when you talk about the emotional side of it, right, and giving them the confidence, but ultimately that foundation for success. Talk about some of those elements that you're weaving into this.
Well, all of our clubs run different programs that address that. The one that comes to mind is we have one called Passport to Manhood, and we have another one called Smart Girls. And those things address, dating and all of that, but also the conflict resolution piece is critical. And so we have anti-bullying programs and other things, but just giving them the tools that they need. And I think we all have recognized that, shutting down for 3 years that had a much deeper impact than we ever would have imagined 2 or 3 years ago. And we're seeing that now. But we're also seeing that I think from what I've observed is they're hungry to, they're hungry to get back to somewhat of a normal life and also to learn. And so it's, when you take a kid who was, say, a junior at the beginning of all this, and they missed graduation and they missed all the normal things that would have happened. I'm hoping that's not a lost generation, because sometimes we did lose kids. They just never came back. But for the most part, what I'm seeing is just a real desire to learn quickly and then get into whatever line of work they choose. Where I see our role is to open their eyes to much more. So you mentioned music, and that's a good example, because if you ask them what would you like to do, especially in the music field, they might say they want to be a performer. But we have to explain to them, well, that's a possibility, and we don't want to tell you that it's not. But there's other careers in the music industry that are equally important. Everything from marketing to lighting to roadies to all of the things that social media management, all of that evolves around the music industry and the arts in general. And so we've designed a course together with our partner, which is Notes for Notes, who built our music studio, and we developed a portable mobile studio that we can take to the high schools, and they can record and they can work with other students in other high schools or anywhere in the country. And so they've actually done some recordings together with another studio in another city. And like, the studio in Memphis might write the lyrics, the studio in Chicago might do the music, and then they put it together and release an album. So we've really seen that explode in interest. And so I'm hoping these mobile studios, which we just launched this week, will really be a really asset to the high schools and to our program. But the same thing with all of our programs. When I go in and speak, or one of my speakers comes in, it's amazing how they just don't, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And until you get in and see the type of people that work there, the environment that you're going to be working in, you kind of see a little bit of the work. You've done some of it at our technical training center maybe, but you haven't actually done it on the job site. And so doing that, being exposed to that, really makes all the difference. Now, we had a couple of months ago, or actually right before the pandemic, we did an internship program with Methodist Hospital. And again, they had really no idea what they were going to be getting into. But they worked in every department, from housekeeping to radiation oncology to administrative. Their office was lit. It was right next to the office of the CEO. And so Florence Jones, she's the CEO of Methodist North. And so she would come in every day and check on them and see how they were doing. And I came back at the end, and they had a graduation for them. And all the doctors and nurses and staff were there. My kids were there. They were crying. It was a great experience. And those kids literally walked away with a business card with a cell phone number of all these different doctors and so forth, the people they worked with. That's the social capital I'm talking about that's important. And it would have never happened if they wouldn't have been willing to bring our kids in, and our kids wouldn't be willing to take that experience.
You also have the AutoZone automotive program. Touch on why all this is so important. You come from a law enforcement background on your end. And so when you talk about what this means for opportunities for our youth, and these are our future voters, parents, entrepreneurs, innovators, business and community leaders, but all of this work really is important in a ripple effect for our community, because keeping these kids on the right path, our young, men and women on the right path, gives them hope, gives them opportunities, gives them a future that they want to fight for. And it keeps them from going down the negative path. And so I think the work you're doing is extremely important for the youth, for the families, for the schools. Larger context, though, extremely important for our community. So touch on the ripple effect, if you will, the larger context of this work.
Well, I think that, the reality is if you don't have strong bonds between law enforcement and the community, and it's particularly law enforcement and youth, you're setting yourself up for disaster. I've seen it for over 30 years, my law enforcement career, and then the work I did in Florida, and now that I'm doing it here. I've always involved, well, I ran our police activities lead program, and that's one of my assignments when I was a police officer. So I saw how that bond could change reality. I never forget some of the experiences I had there. And then I went to Florida. The chief of police in Gainesville was on my board, and we partnered together and built a program. He had a program called Record House, which we chartered as a Boys and Girls Club. And then here, the same thing. So we've had police officers on our board. I have a close relationship with many of them, and I can't tell you how some of them just nobody knows what they do, but they just show up with pizza and plain clothes and come and hang out with the kids. The kids know who they are, but it's not what they expected. And so we've already seen that happening in the high school, the bonds being built between the two. It's much harder for a police officer in reality to arrest somebody that they know personally. And it's much harder for a child to do something wrong when they don't want to let down that police officer that they've befriended. So that's one reason why I know it works. The other thing is just the overall atmosphere of a club and the work that we do, the workforce development work. We want to be the number one place that people look to when they want to hire. if, it's like our kids, I want them to have a leg up when they go in for their first interview. Not only be prepared, but for the person at AutoZone or FedEx or Williams Sonoma or any of our partners look at that and go, well, oh, you graduated from the Boys and Girls Club. That's 2 points in your favor right there. And we've seen that happen a lot. So I really think we're now part of the Shelby County Crime Commission report strategic plan by name. And I think a lot of people realize we have to do something. I mean, nationwide, we have to do something. It is a crisis. And this is one way of addressing that crisis.
So how can we help? I know you have a number of events and opportunities for the public to plug in. And so one of which is tennis, which I always appreciate and enjoy. But how can we help your efforts?
Well, I think, there's a variety of ways. If you look at our website, which is bgcm.org, there's volunteer opportunities, there's donations, there's the events that you talk about. All of those things are important. Recently, we've added, if you want to host children in your teenagers in your organization or your business, if you want to give them a tour or you want to come speak to us, we can set that up. That's probably the number one thing that we're doing right now, is trying to produce and provide as many opportunities like that as we can, and think out of the box, because we constantly get approached by people that, have you ever thought about this? So we've done a lot of kind of unusual things, but it's something that all of them could lead to something. So if there's somebody that's interested in coming and make a presentation, let's say you're a banker, you want to do a class on financial literacy, or you musician, you want to come and perform and talk about that, what led to your successes in whatever field you're in. Or if you have a large company and you want to give a tour, and we'll get a bus or whatever it takes and bring them to you and set that up. I think, again, that's probably one of the number one things. Always financially it's important, and there's that ability as well, but these opportunities are just as important.
When you talk about hosting a tour for a company, on average, and I know it can range obviously, but how many youth would be taking part in a tour?
Typically, I'd say the majority of the time we bring a van full. So, 13, 14 kids. We have the ability, if we need it, we can charter a bus and bring, like when we went to Nashville, we went to three universities a couple of weeks ago, and we took 2 charter buses. So we've got the ability to do whatever scale that we want or you want, but normally I'd say the average is about 12 to 15.
Well, hopefully that gets the wheels spinning in terms of the business leaders thinking, hey, here's an opportunity to host our youth, share what we do, but inspire them. And so I think there's so many easy ways, just like you're talking about, for us to plug in and help lift and work together for the benefit of our youth. You never can say it enough. So go ahead and wrap up again with website, social media. Where do we go to learn more and get involved?
Well, the website is bgcm.org. All the links to our social media are there. We're on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter even. So we're pretty active. So there's a lot of information on there. We post almost daily, success stories and links to stories about our kids. If you look at our Facebook page right now, one of our kids, she graduated in May from Lemoyne Owen. She's Lemoyne Owen actually did a recruitment video featuring her. So that's pinned to the top of our Facebook page. She's an incredible young lady. It's a great story. She's now works at FedEx as an aircraft mechanic and a recruiter. So she came through our program, and that's just one example of many. But there's a lot of other things on there to look at.
The website again is bgcm.org. Keith Blanchard, President and CEO, Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Memphis. Thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, and I'll see you on the tennis court next year.